everyone. Hope you're having a beautiful evening wherever you are in the world. Bear with me a second. Okay, let me just share this in a couple of groups and then I will begin. I was actually in bed putting the girls to sleep and then had this big message come through, and it was like, Donna, you've got to record a video, you need to speak. So here I am creating a video about to share a very, very important message that is close to my heart for sure. So just check in. And one more. All right, we're ready to go. I can put this on pause. So I have titled, what did I title this? Define yourself and create a life of depth and meaning. Yeah, so as I was putting Luca to sleep, I was listening, and when I receive messages, they normally come, I know this might be weird, but some of you might be able to relate. They come from like the etherical realms up in the right. That's where I feel them, and they kind of flow through into my ear and I receive them. Sometimes they come from the left, but mostly they come from the right hand side for whatever reason, right? So as I'm laying down and putting the girls to sleep, singing them songs, I hear this message come through, and it was to really make it clear and to speak to, I guess, the highest vision of who you are, your highest self, yeah, like your most authentic embodiment of self, and to really speak to that and to hold ourselves to this higher standard so that we can create a life that is beautiful, rich in meaning, yeah? And I really wanted to speak to how imperative it is and how important it is to define who you are beyond the influence of other people. Yeah. Now, I was fortunate enough to learn this lesson quite early on in my life. I remember moving to Melbourne. I was 18 years old and I moved out of my hometown with two of my best friends with $200 and 2 suitcases, and just kind of went on a whim. That free spirit in me needed to experience more, needed to experience a new culture, a new way of living, new people. Yeah, it was a hunger that I craved for. So we went to Melbourne and set up home there, and that was an interesting journey for 6 months. The two girls that I travelled with ended up moving back to Queensland. They couldn't handle the Melbourne or the Victorian winter. And I was actually forewarned beforehand by my sister's friend, actually, and she told me, look, Melbourne is going to be really intense for you coming from Townsville, you know, small town, Queensland, fucking hot. She's like, the winter's going to be really intense. It's going to be really different. You're probably going to get sick a few times as your body adjusts, but stick with it. And so I really took that advice on, and she said that after that kind of first transition through your first winter, coming into that year or then, you know, beyond, you're going to love it. But in that first 6 months to a year, it's really going to stretch you. It's going to be a different way of living, different costs involved in living, and it's going to be very different. But, you know, Melbourne will open you up to new possibilities. And it really did that. So after the two girls left, what happened is I found myself alone. Like I didn't know anybody. I had one friend that used to work in the Queen Victoria markets with me, and I used to smoke cones with her. So that's how I connected, was just smoking weed, because I was so depressed and had no money. So that was all that we kind of did, and that was not a very healthy relationship for me to be in. I actually had to find a new place to live. I really felt the immensity of being this, you know, small town girl in a really, really big city, to the point where I used to put myself in situations. I would go and sit at Swanston Street or Burke Street on my days off, and I would sit there for an hour, 2 hours, and in the peak of the day, so when everyone was on their lunch break, and literally kind of step into this feeling of being completely isolated and alone in myself, and just watching like a whole world buzzing around me, like this big hive, and just being really still within that. And that was really interesting. It brought up a lot of feelings in me. It brought up a lot of feelings like, who am I? Like, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? Even though, you know, I've kind of been questioning that since I could question. But I really had to sit with that uncomfortable feeling of going, okay, well, ultimately I'm alone. Always going to be alone in this life because I'm an individual on my journey, but I didn't need to be lonely. And so as I continued my journey, I really decided to unpack these behaviors that I had, these characteristics and personality traits that I had that weren't intrinsically mine, that were picked up from high school or from, you know, being in that group think mentality, and that, you know, you kind of adjust and adapt to whatever the group is doing. And what I noticed in myself, particularly being a highly sensitive person, is that whenever I would be around a group, I would start to act like them. I would start to speak those nuances, right? And I kind of would lose my sovereignty, myself, in the themes of what the group was doing and what was acceptable within the group. And, you know, even just the different behaviors of the group. I struggled when I was young through, you know, peer pressure as we know it, to question what that was. And Melbourne, being in Melbourne on my own, so a young woman in a city of over 3 million people, I think it was at the time, trying to find myself, trying to find my edges and to really connect with my true and authentic self. And I began to question a lot. I began to let go of old stories of who I thought I was that weren't real. And I began to check in with what I actually liked to do. Like, what gave me pleasure? What gave me joy? You know, it was reading a lot and music. And I actually enjoyed going to art galleries and enjoyed going to movies. And I would take myself there by myself and enjoy my own company. And that way I wasn't beholden to anybody else's perspective. I could completely immerse myself in the way I extracted joy and meaning out of those situations. And I have to say that it was really quite liberating. It was really liberating to really question who I was, what I stood for, what I wanted in my life, and to really listen to myself deeply. And there was a period there where I felt like I didn't have any friends. I felt so alone and isolated. I had a housemate who was an interesting person. And I was still working. I was working in a job that I didn't particularly like, but it was bringing in the money. And then it got to the point where being in this job that was really stressful and kind of psychologically abusive, I had to make that decision to keep investing in that or saying yes to me and what was in complete alignment for what I knew I wanted in life and didn't want to tolerate anymore, and taking a risk for that. And the reason why this is coming up is from a conversation with a dear sister today. And it's really kind of stirred some stuff in me that I wanted to share. And I find that it is really, really important. And this comes into being completely authentic with yourself and aligning with your true path and purpose. And when I speak about alignment, there might be some people listening to this that they don't know what that true path and purpose is. And that's okay. It's actually a really awesome space to be in, because it gives you an opportunity to listen to yourself, to listen to what your desires are, what you actually yearn for. And if you don't know what that is, then look for the things that you don't want. Because when you have that strong response in your body, it's telling you something, yeah? And so you can begin to formulate what your morals and ethics are based on what you don't like and what you don't want, and maybe you see that in other people in the way that they show up, that it really doesn't resonate with you. And so you can go, okay, well, thank you for that lesson, and I choose not to be like that. And that's a really, really powerful perspective to adopt in life and to really, really connect with who you are, what you stand for, what your morals are, what your values are, and to then create your life in accordance with those and to be non-compromisable in them. And that's how we kind of move forward and create more amazing opportunities. So I really want to speak to that. If you're feeling like you're a little bit unclear, maybe you're in a transition stage in your life, maybe you're in a state of frustration that you know that whatever you're experiencing right now, you are not meant to be settling for, that there is more to life than this. Maybe you've kind of gone off the beaten track a bit. You've taken the scenic route to learn some interesting lessons, right? Like whatever it is really bringing everything into the moment, to this present moment right now, and to be radically honest with yourself. Who are you? Who are you in your human self? And what do you stand for? Now, this is a really, really important question to ask, and it's a really confronting question to ask. And it can be one of those questions that might take you years to extract and to be really comfortable in. But it's really, really important to define yourself. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you'll allow other people to define you and to place labels on you and stories on you. And all of a sudden you can become a victim to circumstance. Yeah? And it doesn't have to be that way. So when you define yourself, you kind of create that clear map of who you are and to align with things that fill you up with joy. Yeah? That create beauty in your life and meaning, because without meaning, what's the fucking point of being here? Like, what is the point of being here if you don't have meaning in your life? So this is an opportunity to connect with what is meaningful to you. And if you are unsure on the thinking space, that's where you get to listen to your body, because your body won't lie. Your body will give you sensory information of what is meaningful to you. And that's where we can listen to our emotions. Yeah? So even delving into that a bit deeper, like, you can listen to your emotions of where you feel that softening and just that, oh, wow, moment where you could be sitting and kind of feeling like you've stepped outside of time, or that the world is abuzz and you might not feel like you're a part of it. And this is particularly pertinent if you've experienced depression before. It's a very interesting experience. So when you feel like everything's happening externally, is you can take a moment to just kind of observe the busyness, observe the creativity and people in their stories and in their roles, and just watch it all play out. And that's when you get to go, oh, wow. You can see people that are conscious and present and want to connect. You can see people when they're coming from that full egotistical, narcissistic space where they only connect with you because they want something. You can see people playing into stories where the past is recreating itself over and over again. And you can see when you look in people's eyes, when they're present in their body, and you get to choose from what inspires you, what you seek to emulate. And that's a really beautiful part about seeking inspiration from other people, yeah? Is that we can enjoy and celebrate other people that, courageously offer themselves to the world in whatever way that is, and treat that as a gift to help us remind us of who we are and remind us of our humanity. And remind us of our connection to self, to the land, to nature, to spirit, to something bigger than ourselves. So it's really coming into the present moment beyond the story. Now, this is a really, really tricky, challenging part, particularly if you've got a lot of consuming stories that you identify with, or perhaps you've invested a lot of energy in creating these stories and maybe you're unsure how to step out or to let go because you've invested so much of your time and energy, and this could be going on for years, yeah? And I ask this question to you. Who are you beyond the story? If you didn't play into those stories that are confining you and you feel constricted within and you want to break free from, what happened if you just let go of the story? Who would you be right here and now if you severed those ties or reeled them in, whatever you need to do? Who are you in this moment? And this is where we can draw upon the medicine of our stories, that they shape us, but they don't define us completely. And only you get to define who you are, what you stand for, what you want to create in the world. And it's up to you. It's actually your responsibility each and every single day to claim yourself fully, beyond the stories, beyond the bullshit that tries to keep you squashed, that squashes your spirit, that tries to tell you that you're not good enough, or who are you to think that you can do this in the world. Like, they're all stories. They're not real. Yeah? You're real in this body, in this beautiful, beautiful vehicle, and only you get to define who you are. And this is where we can unpack these stories and projections that, you know, perhaps created wounding from childhood, or maybe somebody said something in the heat of the moment that hurt you and you took that on and it became a deep imprint. Who are you beyond the confines of those stories? Who are you beyond the influence of your friends and family? What do you really love to do? What fills you up? What gives you joy? Yeah, how do you actually really like to express yourself? Yeah, what do you love to eat? How do you like to nourish yourself? How do you like to express your weirdness, your creativity, your funky nature, like whatever it is? How do you actually like to do that? And what would happen if you actually gave yourself complete permission to be you unashamedly, authentically, in the sovereign seat of yourself? Yeah? Sovereignty, really coming home into your body, into who you are, defining who you are, having strong morals and values that you align to, so that all of your actions are in alignment to that, that you can walk forward with integrity, self-integrity. And that integrity is developed once you define yourself. And that integrity allows you to make decisions beyond the influence of other people, that you can take right action, R-I-T-E, you know, and kind of connect with lore, L-O-R-E, not L-A-W, because you're in integrity and you're in complete alignment with your sovereign self, yeah? For anyone that's really interested to kind of look into sovereignty and freeman's law, that's really interesting. If you want to start looking into that from perspective of LAW and claiming yourself, start looking into maritime admiralty law and look into what freeman's law is and start to go, whoa, like can be a bit of a head fuck. But if you want to kind of look at it in that realm, it will help you draw upon strength to take your power back, to claim yourself fully, to be home in your body, to allow your mind to be in service to your greater dreaming, not to allow it to control you and hijack your creative energy, your life force vitality, to play out whatever crazy stories that are keeping you in that sense of slavery to them, because they're not real. So we've really got to learn how to unhook ourselves from the stories and come home to self more fully. And the first stage to do that is to start being curious and questioning. And that it doesn't have to be this like mammoth, crazy, confronting thing. It can actually be fun, and it can be expansive, and it can be beautiful, and it can actually provide you deep insight into connecting with your humanity. Yeah, because when we connect with ourselves in all of our perfectly imperfect ways and come to peace with that, that allows us to connect deeply with other people. And then we start walking a path with heart and kindness and compassion. And we start to see the humanity in everybody And we walk that way where we seek to encourage everybody to be the best version of themselves. Yeah. And I know that, I mean, that's what I'm here for. And that's what I continue to challenge myself with day in, day out. It gives me the strength and the resilience to do the inner work, the shadow work. Yeah. So that's what was really, really coming through. And I hope I have served the message as it's coming through me this evening. I hope that whoever hears this message can draw strength upon that. To also know that, like, yeah, we might feel alone as an individual, and you kind of come into this world as an individual and you go out that way too. But there is a big difference between being alone, which we ultimately all are on our journey with our unique perspectives. There's a difference between being alone and lonely. And the way to bridge that gap is to define yourself, claim your sovereign seat in your soul. Like, take that, claim it fully. Be home in your body, be present in the moment. And then you don't feel lonely anymore, because you realize that we are connected as human beings, having this crazy, wild experience of life that I think, and the more that I mature in life, I seriously think that life is a divine comedy. It's tragedy and it's brutally hilarious and crazy, and it's in all of its wild twisting turns, and here we are, you know. So yeah, wherever you are in the world, I want to wish you so much love for all that you are, for all that you continue to be, and for showing up each and every single day, for being here, and knowing that the more that we fully trust ourselves and give ourselves permission to be ourselves fully and unashamedly, the more we give other people permission to do so as well. The more we unhook from those old stories, and that's when we get to really step into our roles of conscious co-creators, and we get to create a world that is fun and deeply inspiring and fulfills us from the inside out. So much love. Mwah! Many blessings to you. And that's me signing off before I get into another crazy ranty stage. So yeah, take a deep breath. Place your hand on your heart. You're here. You're alive. You're doing it. And we're all in this together.